Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Kudo, King Among Bears. He's a 2 mana 2/2 and other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. Kudo is a really funny commander as he simply levels the plane for everybody because his static ability counts not only for your creatures, also for your opponent's creatures, and so everybody has 2/2 bears. Even though this is really funny, you still want to win the game, and this is how you're going to do it. You either want to play creatures that enter the battlefield with +1/+1 counters, and you also want to play creatures that give all of your creatures Anthem Effects, so you simply overpower your opponent's bears, and then win with an Overrun effect. Anthem effects that you can play are, for example, Tristani Discordant, a 5 mana 1/4, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. When she enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 White Soldier creature tokens with lifelink, and at the beginning of your end step, each player gains control of all creatures they own. Not only does she bring a few bodies with her that will automatically turn into 2/2s, but she will also pump them up so you will end up with 2 3/3s. You also play King Darian, a 3 mana 2/3, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. He also has a mana sync ability. For 5 mana, put a 1/1 counter on King Darian and create a 1/1 White Soldier creature token. You can also sacrifice him at instant speed, so creature tokens you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Important to note about this sacrifice ability is that he only cares about creature tokens, so always keep that in mind. Maya, Bretagard Protector, a 5 mana 2/3, and other creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Not only do all of these creatures create creature tokens which will automatically turn into 2/2 bears, they also pump them up. And the best Anthem effect in your deck is Elishnorn, Grand Cenobite, a 7 mana 4/7 with Vigilance, and other creatures you control get +2/+2, and the relevant thing is that creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. Since you turn all of them into 2/2 bears, your opponents will lose all of their creatures automatically, which makes Elishnorn and Kudo a great team up. Who would have thought that a Praetor and a bear would synergize so well with each other? And now let's talk about 1/1 counters that you want to deploy on your creatures. Either they should enter with +1/+1 counters, or you need Anthem effects that will give them +1/+1 counters. So we play Arven, Weaver of Hope, a 2 mana 2/1, and each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to Arven, Weaver of Hope's toughness. With Kudo on the battlefield, Arven becomes a 2/2 bear elf noble, and when a creature then enters the battlefield, it will automatically enter with 2 +1/+1 counters. You play Hungering Hydra, a 1 green and X/0/0, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. It can't be blocked by more than one creature, and whenever it is dealt damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. You can cast this one for 1 green mana, so X = 0, and you don't have to be afraid of it dying if Kudo is on the battlefield, because it will be a 2/2 bear in addition to its other types. Champion of Lamphold is great in this deck, a 3 mana 1/1, and creatures with power less than Champion Lamphold's power can't block creatures you control. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Champion of Lamphold. This will automatically make all of your creatures unblockable, so it becomes way easier to swing for the win. You play Goldvein Hydra, a 1 green and X/0/0 with Vigilance, Trample and Haste, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When it dies, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to its power. So with Kudo on the battlefield, you can cast this one for 1 green, you will get a 2/2 Vigilance and Haste, and when it dies you will still get 2 treasure tokens. As also a nice evasion effect, you play Abzan Falconer, a 3 mana 2/3 with Outlast, so you can pay 1 white, tap it to put a 1/1 counter on it, and in addition to that, each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying, so you will turn your army into flying bears. As Hydra is definitely a relevant theme in this deck, you play Colonian Hydra, a 5 mana 0/0 with Trample, and it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. When it attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. As you have seen with some of our Anthem creatures that also produce tokens, these tokens will turn into 2/2s. In addition to that, we will also play some instant speed token generation to surprise our opponents out of nowhere. So we play March of the Multitudes, a 3 mana and and X instant spell with Convoke and create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. Another great instant in this deck is Secure the Wastes, a 1 mana and X instant, create X 1/1 white warrior creature tokens. Grand Crescendo is also a nice protection spell because for 2 white and X an instant, create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens and creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. We also play Call the Copper Codes, a 3 mana instant with Strife, so this spell costs 2 more to cast for each target beyond the first. So you can pump a lot of mana into the spell to target all of your opponents and choose any number of target opponents. Create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of creatures those opponents control. A really cool interaction spell that I haven't known before is Aura Mutation, a 2 mana instant, destroy target enchantment and create X 1/1 green sprawling creature tokens where X is that enchantment's mana value. And if the window fits it, you play Second Harvest, a 4 mana instant. For each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. Since you have now created an army of either powerful bear hydras or a lot of tokens that are also bears in addition to their other types, you will just need your final Overrun effect. So you can play Overwhelming Stampede, a 5 mana sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. In addition to that, we also play Overrun, a 5 mana sorcery. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Depending on how many opponents you have left, you can also play Triumph of the Hordes, a 4 mana sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. If you need to find one of your Anthem creatures or an Overrun effect, you can also cast Finale of Devastation, a 2 green and X sorcery. Search a library and or graveyard for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search a library this way, shuffle. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X/+X and gain haste until end of turn. Creatures that you want to find with this one are for example Moonshaker Cavalry, an 8 mana 6/6 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. We are also playing the green version of it. We play Craterhoof Behemoth, an 8 mana 5/5 with haste, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. You want to win more? You get it. You can play a lot of different themed creatures in this deck, but one is very relevant. You play Metallic Mimic, a 2 mana 2/1 shapeshifter, and as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, which will most likely always be bears, and Metallic Mimic is the chosen type in addition to its other types. Each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This cheap Anthem effect will simply turn all of your creatures that enter into 3/3s with Kudo on the battlefield, so you're automatically at the top of the food chain on the battlefield. And in addition to that, we play Court of Garenbrick, a 3 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch. The Monarch will pretty hard to take for your opponents as you have Anthem effects and +1/+1 counter synergies, so their 2/2 bears won't win against your bigger bears. And at the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures. Then, if you're the Monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. If your opponents didn't manage to take the Monarch from you, this can win you the game in one turn. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play in Kudo, King Among Bears. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.